Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our presentation this morning on AI capabilities, its limitations, and its potential impact on your business. Our presenter today is Marcy Santos of Bahar Consulting. They are a leading authority in small business consulting, coaching, strategic planning, financial management, marketing strategy, revenue growth, and technology. Marcy joined Bahar Consulting in 2021. She brings her entrepreneurial spirit to the team with a focus on helping business owners increase their company's adaptability and resilience against changing market trends. She currently serves on our board of directors and was honored as a 2021 Chamber Young Professional of the Year. So I'd like to turn it over to Marcy.
Thank you, everyone, for being here this morning. It is really wonderful to get to do this presentation for each of you today. So let me just take a minute to share my screen and get that set up for you. Is everyone able to see the slides all right? Awesome, thank you. So today we're going to be talking about adapting to the AI revolution and what does that mean for embracing the future of business. So I know Margie asked you all to mute. I'm going to ask you to unmute for a minute, and then we're going to do a quick self-assessment about where do you rate yourself in terms of your AI capabilities. Both in terms of capabilities, are you low to no knowledge, you don't regularly use AI, to high expertise, early adopter, you're using AI every single day, to where do you feel about it? Are you brimming with excitement? Do you want to see what's coming next? Or are you really having a lot of reservations? There's things that you're not comfortable with about where AI is going, and you have a lot of questions that you think need answered. So if everyone could take a minute, you can call out, where do you see yourself in in quadrants 1 through 4?
One. I'm a little 1 and 4, to be honest. Like, I'm excited, but I'm also fearful because we'll see what happens.
Great.
Same.
I echo that. Yeah.
Anyone's in quadrants 2 or 3? Oh, that's great. Everyone who showed up today is a pretty frequent user of AI, which will be good. So for someone who rated themselves in quadrant 1, why is it that you're excited for AI?
For the possibilities.
Yeah.
Convenience, potential, changing, making things easier.
John, I think you were one of the persons who also had some feelings in quadrant 4. What are your fears?
There's like all those weird stories that have come out of like the robot, even though that's not true, like the one that committed suicide when it was doing that simple task of moving the box when really it just like fell over. Mm-hmm. But there's all these stories that you never know if they're true or not, and that's just what social media is. So that's why I'm a little fearful, because you never know what coming out is actually true or not true until you actually do your research on your own. So
right. So you'd say there's a lot of misinformation out there.
I think there's a lot of propaganda, so to speak, on both spectrums, on it being like really, really good or like gonna take over the human race. So like
it's not quite there yet, so at least we know that. So what is it that we're going to try to achieve today? During this presentation, there's 3 main questions I want us to answer. First off, what is artificial intelligence? Second, how is AI going to impact our workplaces? And 3, especially as business owners, what can we do to prepare for these changes that AI is bringing? Okay, so the basic question, what is AI? I'm going to read out a pretty generic explanation. It's pretty technical, but we'll dive into it in just a minute. Essentially, AI is a branch of computer science that enables machines to mimic human cognitive functions, such as learning and problem solving. Through algorithms and data, these machines can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence and improve their performance over time. So how do we get AI systems to work in the first place? How are they designed? Well, AI systems are trained on vast amounts of data, which enables them to recognize patterns and make predictions. It's an iterative process. They learn and adjust from their errors and improve accuracy over time. This allows them to perform tasks ranging from image recognition to natural language processing and complex decision making. So that was a lot of jargon. Let's distill it down into the three main points about what is AI, especially for the purposes of business and strategy. First off, AI can recognize patterns and it can make predictions. It's a self-improving system, meaning it doesn't just need updates from humans and designers, but it can actually learn and modify from the data and predictions it's making. And most importantly, it is not a single software. It is more than just ChatGPT. And I think that's something that we hear a lot in the lexicon. People refer to AI, and they might use it interchangeably with a specific software, sort of how we still say Xerox when we're actually talking about copying paper. But AI is not just one type of system, and it's not just doing one type of task. So think of it as a genre of computer systems that can make predictions and learn from patterns. So I want to contextualize a little bit more about where we are in terms of types of AI. And there's four types, computer programmers consider that there's four types of AI out there. The first is reactive AI. So what makes an AI reactive? It can only respond to immediate situations and doesn't have any memory, and it can't learn from past experiences. These are AIs we use pretty frequently, especially if you use Siri or Google Assistant. So these are pretty prevalent in their lives, but they have not made the same impact as some of the more limited memory AIs which are coming out now. So think of things like Spotify, Netflix, and this is the area that ChatGPT would fall into. So what makes something a limited memory AI? It can learn from and make decisions based on a limited amount of stored past data and experiences. And that can almost sound surprising when we talk about ChatGPT because it almost feels infinite when you're using it. Where is all this information coming from? How is it processing it? But it's important to understand that ultimately ChatGPT still is limited in what it has learned and what it can retain. It simply can retain a lot more information than our human brains could retain in a single moment. The third type of AI is the theory of mind. So that's robots that are AI that it can understand and interpret beliefs, intentions, and the emotions of others. It can interact and collaborate more effectively with humans. So at this time, we don't really have theory of mind AI. We have a couple robots, if anyone's heard of the robot Sophia, who can recognize emotions in human faces. But we haven't quite reached the theory of mind stage yet. And the final stage is essentially what you see in science fiction. It's the self-aware AI. It not only understands itself and its own capabilities, but has a consciousness and a sense of its own experiences. It's similar to human self-awareness. And that's the AI you think of when you think of science fiction. You think of Skynet and the end of the world, essentially. But we are very far from that. In fact, scientists are not even sure it's possible at this time. They're rating it as either decades, if not hundreds of years from now. But that timeline is always changing, which is why we want to kind of be informed, use AI, and come to understand it better. So based on these types of AIs and these definitions, does anyone have an idea of when the first AI was created? And I understand it's a little bit of a trick question because there's a little bit of debate about it, but generally accepted, what was the first AI? Anyone want to gamble a guess? Who here thinks it was after the year 2000? Would it surprise anyone if I said the first considered AI was built in 1951? The first considered AI was a chess program where it was able to react from information that had been given. So AI has been around for a long time. Once again, it's a system of types of machines. It's not just one particular type of thing, such as ChatGPT. So how do we categorize AI? So we have artificial narrow intelligence. That's AI that's very task specific. It can really just do one type of task very well and learn on that. But that knowledge can't be applied outside of that narrow range. There's artificial general intelligence, which is more human-like and capable of learning. And we're putting programs such as ChatGPT at the very beginning of the curve for artificial general intelligence. And finally, there's artificial superintelligence. And this is AI that can outperform and outlearn what humans can currently do. So what do we expect AI's impact on business to be? We know that AI is poised to revolutionize the business landscape by automating routine tasks, increasing operational efficiencies, and transforming industries across all sectors. That means we're going to see a disruption of traditional business models, new opportunities and challenges coming up for small businesses, increased productivity across the board. But with that, on the flip side, we're going to see job displacement and workforce transitions. So what are the most common current applications of AI that are being used? We have analysis and predictions. This is when AI helps businesses analyze large amounts of data and find important patterns and make predictions. For example, banks could use AI to predict investment trends, and healthcare can use it to identify health risks in patients. Second common application is market research. This is when AI analyzes customer data and online behavior to understand trends and preferences, thus allowing businesses to personalize marketing campaigns and target specific customer groups more effectively. Third, we have automation of routine tasks. AI can very well automate repetitive tasks like assembly line work in factories or administrative tasks in offices, so that employees can then focus on more important and complex work. And finally, customer service. These are the AI-powered chatbots and virtual assistants like Siri and Alexa, helping companies provide quick and automated customer service, answering common questions, and basic troubleshooting. So looking at businesses, what do we have in common about what tasks, what roles, and what industries are going to be first impacted? Referring back to that past slide, we saw things in data processing and analysis, thinking, basic data entry, research and gathering, basic data analysis, administrative tasks, such as routine administrative tasks, email management, basic accounting and bookkeeping, basic customer support and service, transcriptions and translations. In manufacturing, it would be affecting the assembly line work, predictive maintenance, and equipment monitoring. In the financial and market analysis, it would be trends and financial analysis is where it's going to really excel. And in content generation and testing, especially for basic reporting, basic updates, and quality assurance. So we just went through a big list. What do those things have in common? First, they're primarily basic or entry-level tasks. They can be automated, meaning, we don't necessarily need a lot of human intervention to make them happen. We don't need humans sitting there to make sure it works well. This is something that a computer would be able to take over, and it's really the basic entry-level type of stuff. So when we think about AI, the next step from what it can do well, what is it that AI really can't do? The limitations of our current AI is that it really lacks common sense understanding. AI only knows what it has been told, either by the user or in its training phase. It might not comprehend basic concepts like sarcasm, can lead to a lot of misunderstandings, especially because of literal interpretations. Other things would just be a lack of understanding. For example, it might not know that a wet floor is slippery unless it's specifically been taught that. But as humans, that's something that we can understand. It's going to have very limited contextual understanding. It's not going to really understand things that are ambiguous or nuanced or that require additional contextual clues outside of what it can retain in its memory. We're seeing that when it comes to the use of AI to develop autonomous vehicles. How can it understand real-time traffic scenarios, especially unconventional situations or things that involve unpredictable human behavior? And third, and this is a really big hot topic, but what are the ethical and bias challenges we're facing with that AI? Once again, it goes back to AI only has the data that it's been provided, and that includes the biases inherent in that data. Examples of where this is really coming into play would be things like our healthcare system. What is the transparency around how that data is being used and stored? What are the biases in how that data was collected? And how could that how could that end up perpetuating biases that already exist? Without actual intervention in the teaching processes of this AI, as well as transparency about the data, we don't know what those outcomes could be. So there's a lot of ethical considerations, not just in our daily use of AI, but in terms of the development of it. What are the safeguards necessary to protect our privacy and security when we're handling personal data? What is the transparency and what is it being trained on? And these are really important questions for us to ask as a society. Does anyone want to add what they see as the biggest limitation of AI? So moving on, let's kind of flip our heads and say, well, if these are what's going to be first impacted, how can we look at the flip side of that? Well, if the first to be impacted is going to be those basic and entry-level tasks, the flip side would be to focus on domain expertise, our own human knowledge and our own expertise in a specific field that goes beyond the basic and entry level. If it can be automated, that means focusing more on our critical thinking skills. Tasks that can't be automated are going to be the most resilient to impacts from AI. Minimal human intervention, creativity. What skills, what tasks do need human intervention and critical thinking in order to move forward? So thinking about these resilient skills and what we need to be focusing on in our businesses and with our employees, we have creativity and innovation, critical thinking and complex problem solving, emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills, leadership and management, adaptability and learning agility, domain expertise and specialized knowledge. These are the skills for us to both invest in for ourselves and our employees so that we are most resilient to these changes being brought on by AI. So as businesses, how can we focus on this adaptation? Number one, embrace AI as a tool. And I say tool, not replacement. See it as an extension of the productivity an employee or you yourself can already do. This is how can it enhance what you're already doing versus take away or replace it. And most importantly, it's about understanding and interacting with the AI, whether or not you choose to bring it into your business or the work that you do. Because if we're not up to date and understanding of the AI around us, we're going to be left behind as this transition continues on. Focus on the high value human skills. Think back to that list that I came up with, investing more in emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills, in becoming adaptable, in expanding in your domain expertise. Foster a culture of lifelong learning. Promote learning mindset within your organization. Emphasize continuous upskilling and reskilling initiatives to ensure employees are equipped with necessary skills and knowledge to work alongside these AI systems effectively. Okay. So I'd like to open it up to what questions people might have.
What about AI being factual or up to date? Where are we with that? I know, for example, ChatGPT originally says that they can't guarantee facts past like 2021, I think it is. Do we know, like, how does that impact those of us that use it?
I think that's very important, and that goes back to domain expertise and specialized knowledge. For those of you who aren't familiar, ChatGPT does this thing that we've nicknamed hallucinating. So when an AI is performing its program, really what GPT-4 is, which is the system that ChatGPT is built on, it's a generative predictive text program. So that's where it comes in, where it's really important to understand how the program actually functions. So what ChatGPT is doing is taking the input you give it, breaking it down into tokens, which are bite-sized words or even portions of words, and then based on the information it has, predicting what it thinks the most likely next word is. That's essentially what ChatGPT is doing. So when we understand that, we can better understand why is it hallucinating? Why is it coming up with these answers? And that goes back to what information was it trained on? What was it fed? What was it taught? ChatGPT isn't a program that's based on giving you factual information. It's based on predicting what it thinks will happen next. So that's where you could see it coming up with incorrect information based on what it's seen in past texts. It's not able to fact check it. It's not able to think critically about what is the source, where's this information coming from. And on top of that, it's been trained to do its best to appear intelligent. So if it doesn't have the information, rather than doing what a human might do, or at least a human who has integrity might step back and say, hey, I don't know that, I can research it, I can go more into it. The system doesn't have that level of critical thinking. So what it's going to try to do is fill in those gaps, whether or not that information is correct. So it's going to try to present back to you text where it may or may not be factual, and you don't have any information on that, and you can't really even ask the program. You could maybe do a little bit of prompt engineering and reply back to it. Can you give me some sources to back up the work you've done? But that's when both our critical thinking and our domain expertise come in very important, because you cannot guarantee the work that this AI does. You are 100% responsible for fact checking it. So first off, you need to know what you're talking about first and foremost. You can't rely on ChatGPT to create that answer. So you need to have the ability or the domain expertise or the specialized knowledge to be able to actually fact check what this is saying. And second, you need to have the critical thinking skills to think about, number one, how can I check it? How can I see where this information is coming from? How can I support it? What should I be even asking myself when I receive these generated responses? I should be thinking about, where did the information come from? What is this AI actually trying to do? And how can I make it something that I can stand by? So that's why it's really important to not just rely on AI, but once again, use it as an extension of your productivity tools rather than a replacement, because it simply cannot replace expertise.
I actually have another question too.
Mhm.
For newer people or people who are not familiar with using AI, is there a way, or do you have a recommendation of a particular AI to use? So if I'm writing for a tax accountant, my vibe is going to be different than if I'm writing for a yoga studio.
Mhm.
Right? So is there a way that the AI can get to know me better or get to know my client better so that they can speak as my client would? Like, is it that intelligent? I mean, I'm sure it is, but I mean, how do we get there?
Because ultimately the tool is only as intelligent as the user. And that's true for most productivity tools out there. That's really important to think about. So for anyone who's not familiar, there's a field called prompt engineering. And that's essentially, how can we use these AIs and get the most out of them? How can we create prompts that help us get to where we need to go? So using your example of maybe you're creating content for a yoga studio or some other thing, the least effective way to go about it would be to go onto AI, and I'm going to use ChatGPT for this example because it's the most commonly used AI for this type of work, would be go on and say, write me a blog post for a yoga studio. You have a little bit of context there, but it's just limited. And once again, the AI only knows what we are telling it to do. It only has the context which we provide for it. So one way to really elevate your prompts is to go through the role, task, format way of prompting. The role would be, you're a content creator for a marketing company working with a yoga studio. The task is, you are looking to create a blog post. The blog post is meant to be informative. It is meant, this is where you'd really come in with the voice that you're looking for. You would explain to the AI what you want it to do. You wouldn't assume it'd be able to replicate that voice. So you think about, do you want it to be friendly? Do you want it to be informative? What is it you want it to convey? What is the purpose of this? Is it to convert readers into becoming paying clients? Is it meant to be persuasive? Thinking about what the intended outcome is And vocalizing that is very important because AI actually, and specifically ChatGPT, is very good at understanding intention when we tell it what that intention is. And then finally, the format. I want a blog post with, you know, an intro paragraph, 3 main points. Here are the main points, actually telling it what you want it to convey, and a conclusion. And you say, I want the conclusion to convince the reader that they should start doing yoga for their mental health. And when you create that sort of structure, when it's very highly based on your human input with context about your intentions, that's where you start getting the very rich generated responses that more match your intention and can be more easily edited and reworked to fit your purposes versus the extremely generic content you're going to get without going through prompt engineering.
Great, thank you.
Marcy, I have a couple of questions. First of all, are you using AI with your clients? Are you guys adapting it? Are you embracing it? And if so, what type of clients and what are you doing to help them with it?
A lot of what we're doing with clients is addressing sort of the fears and the reskilling needs to focus on how can they build a more resilient business. I would say for me personally, I use AI very frequently for small tasks. Think things like you go to a meeting, you write your notes in shorthand. They're not necessarily what you want to share with someone because they don't look quite as professional. Taking those notes and having them rewritten, because that's a very high human generated content. And it's not really meant for public use. Especially in a lot of our fields, you know, if you're in the finance sector, if you're working with businesses or you're doing strategy, that's where you're going to see a lot of the AI limitations because it doesn't have those critical thinking skills. It doesn't have the ability, you know, when it comes to leadership or personnel management or understanding the interpersonal situations, but it can really help speed up some of the smaller, more monotonous tasks we have to do every day. How many times have you sat down to write an email at the end of the day and you have the 5 bullet points you want to convey in that email and you can't knock out a draft because it's just the end of the day? That to me is a really excellent case for where AI is today. It's taking the small tasks that don't, you know, maybe you've already gone through the critical thinking steps and just speeding up the actual generation so that you can then edit it and send it out. If I was working with a client, I would caution them about their use of AI in terms of public or client related output, because we have to make sure that our own expertise comes first. It circles back to Dawn's question about how do we know that this information is true? So I would caution them from that perspective because you don't want to be giving your clients work that isn't really reflective of the quality they need, of your own expertise, or, you know, it's just not well thought out. But there's so much that AI can do to really speed up the very small things, sort of the drafting process, maybe organizing thoughts. And I do encourage people to use it that way because our time is limited. And the more we can do to generate time to focus on those complex tasks, to really recenter ourselves and focus on the more in-depth tasks is a positive thing, in my opinion. So I would not use AI for really client-facing things or strategy-related things, but think about where it might fit into your just daily routine for generating drafts or organizing thoughts would be where I am. And the other reason that's really important is because just those light touches with AI and understanding how to work the process helps keep us informed about where AI is going. And that's going to be very important as AI becomes more and more integrated into our daily applications.
Well, I want to challenge you to give another talk and help business owners understand this piece of it, because I think this is sort of the next level of what we can learn from you. Mm-hmm. I think it's very valuable, but I think you're giving us the icing on the cake, and we need to know how to, create the recipe.
Yeah. Well, it turns out this group was much more informed in AI than some of my past presentations. So it was so wonderful. I would very much love to delve into the more technical aspects of how we can utilize AI in our day-to-day lives.
Great. I'll be there. Let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Sure.
Hi there. So speaking of experienced people tuning in on the Zoom, so I'm not one of them. But I wanted to learn more about AI because I have been hearing so much about it. My husband and I have a plumbing company that we run out of the Alney area. And I'm just wondering, how does this help people in like trades? Because I'm sure it can be beneficial to everyone. But as you're explaining it, I'm like, how can I apply this to my regular responsibilities or help fine tune our day to day?
Absolutely. Well, at the end of the day, a plumbing company is still a company. So there's going to be all the functional areas of a business besides just the actual operations of what the plumbing work is. So you're still going to have, your finance, accounting, marketing, sales team, HR, all the other aspects that go into that. And there's a lot of back end office administration that can sometimes take away from our time that we have to invest in that client experience, to invest in our more technical education. I'm sure you can think about the days where you've been stuck at the office trying to get through all the client emails, trying to get to the next level. So you can really focus on the client experience or the technical work versus just the day-to-day administrative. And that's where AI is currently most strong, would be in helping manage those tasks. So it could be as simple as writing an email, or perhaps you have if you go to the HR side, maybe you have an SOP in progress that you're writing and you have bullet points and you just really want to knock it out and get on to the next task. That's an excellent task where if you have already kind of an outline of what it is you want it to say, using AI to help flesh that out and generate it would be an excellent use case for that, to really speed up the process of what you're trying to do there so that you can invest your time more wisely.
That's interesting. I do have like this little mini presentation coming up. So I'm wondering, like, I guess this would be used for something like that. I mean, I'm obviously very inexperienced in this, but what, like Chat GPT, is that something that you speak into, or what? I'm not even familiar with that program.
Yeah. So Chat GPT it's a computer program. You can access it online. There's a free version as well as a paid version, but it's essentially what it sounds like in terms of chat. You put in a prompt, and a prompt can be as simple as a one sentence about what information you're looking to get back to, it could be several paragraphs depending on how complex the task is. So for example, if you have a presentation coming up and you're not really sure what to speak about, something I enjoy doing is sparring with the AI. So you might say, I have a presentation, you work in plumbing, so maybe it would be like, imagine that you are a young homeowner who just bought your first house. Tell me what the 5 top questions you have about plumbing would be. And this is a great way to really engage with it and kind of work almost in a conversational manner to help flash out what your presentation could be about.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Marcy, when you're working with clients, you finding that some of them are really embracing this and liking it, or are they feeling this is just another thing on my to-do list and I'm not getting anywhere with it?
I would say there's 2 ends of the spectrum. You have the early adopters who are using it for everything. I've heard people using it to take pictures of what's in their fridge and saying, give me a list of recipes based on the ingredients I have there. And that's like a truly far end of the spectrum of early adoption, all the way to people who they don't want to touch it at all because they're angry or afraid about how it might impact the future, especially for some of our creative work. I'm sure everyone has been reading in the news about the SAG-AFTRA strike and what is AI going to look like in our creative fields if it's replacing our writers, which would be a negative because the human creativity element is really irreplaceable at this current time. But I would caution people away from not engaging with it at all, whether or not they're excited about the future of it, because you cannot express your concerns about it. You cannot be part of the discussion about where it should go if you do not have the basic understanding of what is happening. So I would actually even encourage people who are more afraid to engage with it more so that they can vocalize those concerns and be part of the discussion of where it's going. Especially when it comes to the issues of transparency, what data is being used, what's being used with our own data. Because at this time, I would argue that the biggest fear we should have about AI is not, the Skynet, HAL 9000 taking over the world. but what bad actors are in the world and how are they using AI? And how can we prevent the bad actors from using an AI in ways that harm us? And how can we put in those guardrails?
Got it. Thank you.
Well, if there's no other questions, thank you everyone for coming this morning. I really appreciate this chance to speak with you. And Becky, I absolutely loved your idea of a presentation more in depth about some of the more prompt engineering aspects. And I appreciate that inspiration.
Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you, Becky.
See,
Take care.
the next one.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marcy. Great job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy. It was a wonderful presentation.